Picture this. You are standing in a modern hospital hallway. The air is clean, and the environment feels completely calm. The only real sound is the steady, patient beep of a machine somewhere nearby. A staff member quietly glides past you, pushing a cart loaded with clear bags of liquid. Nobody is screaming, and nobody is panicking. Behind that closed door, a patient who was critically ill just an hour ago is now sleeping peacefully because a stranger saved their life. Now, imagine grabbing a human from 30,000 years ago, someone who has never even seen a metal wheel, and dropping them right here. They wouldn't look at these clean walls and think of healing. They would be utterly convinced they had died and woken up in the afterlife. This is the real story of what a prehistoric human would actually think walking into a modern hospital. Forget the polite, "Wow, technology is amazing" version. We're talking about pure, unadulterated confusion, terror, and awe. But here's the twist. A few things in this high-tech labyrinth would actually make sense to them faster than they do to us. Because while the modern hospital is a very new invention, the instinct to heal is as old as humanity itself. That is the grand paradox. Healing is incredibly ancient, but hospitals are relatively brand new. To see where this gap lives, we have to look at the first thing that would completely break our ancestors' brain: the operating table. Now, the actual concept of surgery wouldn't shock them as much as you think. Our oldest confirmed medical procedure is trepanation, literally drilling a hole right into a living person's skull. We have found skulls in France from 7,000 years ago showing these exact surgical openings. And here is the kicker. The bone around those holes had partially healed over. That means the patients actually survived. Some skulls even show multiple healed holes, meaning people went back for seconds. Long before writing, Egypt, or the invention of the wheel, we knew how to open a head and walk away alive. So surgery itself isn't a foreign concept to our visitor. What would terrify them is how we do it today, without ceremony and by total strangers. In the ancient world, the person holding the knife wasn't just a technician, they were a spiritual guide, a shaman. To them, you couldn't separate the physical body from the spirit. It was all one connected puzzle. Even the famous Egyptian Ebers papyrus mixed real medical treatments with magical chants. Dating back to 1550 BC, it treated wounds with plants, but also with appeals to the gods. A headache wasn't just physical tension, it could be a literal demon that needed to be cast out. Healing required both the correct physical remedy and the exact right magic words. To them, science and spirituality were two sides of the very same coin. Now look at the modern surgeon, masked, sterile, and performing procedures in absolute silence. No chanting, no prayers, no invocation of the gods, just quiet, clinical efficiency. To an ancient mind, this cold silence wouldn't look like healing. It would look terrifyingly like cold-blooded violence. Imagine a person cutting into you, whose face you can't even see. No words are spoken to comfort your spirit or ease your transition. The silence in a modern operating room is meant to focus the doctors, but it would deeply alarm our ancestor. The surgeon finishes, puts down the tool, and simply walks away. To the prehistoric observer, the complete lack of a ritual makes the whole act feel suspicious. Where is the drumbeat? Where is the smoky incense to guide the soul back to the body? Without those anchors, the clinical calm of modern surgery feels profoundly unnatural. But as unsettling as the silence is, there is another mystery that goes even deeper. It is the mystery of pain, or rather, the total absence of it. Because for almost all of human history, healing and pain were exactly the same thing. For thousands of generations, Pain was the price you paid to stay alive. If you needed a broken bone set back into place, it was going to hurt immensely. Pulling a rotten tooth? No numbing cream, just raw force. Stopping a bad bleed meant pressing a red-hot metal blade directly onto the open flesh. This brutal process of cauterization is found in ancient texts all over the world. Modern surgical anesthesia wasn't even successfully demonstrated until 1846. Before that, patients were wide awake, and being held down by strong assistants was just part of the job. Surgeons were actually hired for speed rather than care because a faster cut meant less agonizing torture. Imagine a world where the best doctor is simply the fastest one with a blade. Now, let's show our visitor how we handle pain today. A modern patient lies down, relaxed, completely awake, and talking calmly. They just had a major deep tissue joint replacement, but feel absolutely nothing. In fact, they are casually waking up from the medicine and asking what is for lunch. Our ancient visitor is staring at this scene in total, absolute disbelief. To them, this isn't science. This is high-level magic. How can you cut deep into a bone and not cause the patient to scream in agony? They might pinch their own skin just to make sure they haven't lost the ability to feel. Because in their world, healing and physical suffering were deeply welded together. But the surprises don't stop at pain management. Next comes the battle against the invisible. How do we fight an enemy that nobody can even see? For eons, humans fought a phantom enemy, infection and disease. People blamed a bad wind, angry spirits, or ancestral curses for falling ill. The ancient Greeks believed the body was ruled by 4 basic liquids, or humors. If these fluids fell out of balance, you got sick. This wrong theory lasted for 2,000 years. Meanwhile, ancient Chinese medicine focused on qi, the invisible energy flowing through us. They designed complex treatments, like acupuncture, to unblock this energy. But actual germ theory didn't arrive until the late 1800s. That is when we finally proved that tiny microscopic bugs were the real culprit. Before that, sickness was completely mysterious, frustrating, and terrifying. You could do everything right and still watch your loved one fade away without knowing why. Now, show our ancient guest a modern medical lab technician. They look down a lens, focus a slide, and see the exact shape of the infection. They can point to a screen and say with absolute confidence, "This is what is hurting you." To a prehistoric mind, this person isn't just an analyst. They are the ultimate seer, an oracle who can name the invisible spirits. To have the power to pinpoint the exact source of an illness is a godlike gift. What was once an untouchable mystery is now trapped on a tiny slide of glass. But as brilliant as this high-tech science is, something vital has been lost along the way. And that loss is something our ancestor would notice immediately. They would notice the sudden, chilling loneliness of the modern clinic. In the tribal world, sickness was never a solo journey. The entire community gathered around you. They brought food, sang songs, kept watch, and made sure your illness was witnessed by those who loved you. To them, the presence of your community was a crucial part of the medicine. But in a modern hospital, patients are often isolated behind sterile white curtains. Caregivers are busy, rotating on shifts, and treating you as a series of numbers. Our visitor might look at this and feel a deep sense of heartbreak. Why is this sick person left alone with flashing screens instead of their family? To them, our unmatched efficiency might look indistinguishable from cold abandonment. To someone from a world where community was the medicine, a modern hospital's perfect efficiency might look indistinguishable from total isolation. Yet, if they look closer, they will find beautiful threads of connection. The idea of a dedicated space to go heal isn't actually new. The Greeks had healing temples called Asclepia. Sick people would travel long distances to sleep there and receive remedies. By the 4th century BC, Sri Lanka was already building dedicated hospital facilities. And what about our modern chemistry? Aspirin actually comes from willow bark. Ancient Sumerians and Egyptians were using that exact same bark for fever relief. Our heavy painkiller, morphine, is extracted from the ancient opium poppy. The modern pharmacy is quietly running on the very plants our ancestors gathered. They wouldn't recognize the plastic bottle, but they would absolutely know the cure inside. Underneath the humming lights and high-tech plastic, the ancient project is still alive. It is the timeless, simple, beautiful human drive, keeping one another alive.